So, Mara, let's just begin with the importance of UNRWA. And of course, I've spent a lot of time in Gaza and the West Bank. They run the schools uh, because of, especially in Gaza, since the election of Hamas in 2006, the borders have been tightly controlled by Israel. We can't stress how vital UNRWA is. So just lay out what UNRWA does, and maybe you can amplify a little bit as to why Israel hates the organization so much.
Sure. Thank you, Chris, and thank you for having me and shedding additional light on this very important topic, especially right now, as you've mentioned, watching the killing machine that is GHF in Gaza, and UNRWA really is the moral inverse of GHF. So up in until these atrocities of these last 22 months, UNRWA essentially operated as the de facto, as you mentioned, Ministry of Education, educating over 60% of young people, kindergarten through ninth grade, a de facto Ministry of Health in many aspects, because so many of the primary and secondary health clinics were run by UNRWA. There's a network of health clinics across Gaza, and then a Ministry of kind of Civil Affairs. UNRWA was while UNRWA did not kind of own the refugee camps. UNRWA was certainly in charge of the civil infrastructure, of building out new shelters, repairing shelters that were damaged every time an Israeli bomb was lobbed toward neighborhoods in Gaza. And so UNRWA was almost, alongside the ruling party of Hamas, was almost a kind of governmental operation in the breadth of its services and in the depth of its services. How many people that UNRWA served? A good over 60% of the population, prior to October 7th, were refugees, and UNRWA's mandate, of course, is for refugees. Now, unfortunately, as we've all seen, the entire population of Gaza is refugees. UNRWA performs similar services in East Jerusalem, in the West Bank, in Jordan, in Syria, and in Lebanon. But Gaza was the place that had and still has the greatest number of UNRWA employees. Of the 33,000 employees that have worked at UNRWA across the 5 field sites that I mentioned, 13,000 of them worked in Gaza, and there are still 12,000 UNRWA employees in Gaza today on the ground. And while you said absolutely true, Israel has banned UNRWA, what is not clear to many, and one of the things I want to clarify, is that UNRWA staff, who are Palestinian themselves, are still on the ground and still doing a lot of key essential work. And I'll expound on that further as we continue this conversation. But in terms of Israel's animus toward UNRWA, it has been there a long time. Certainly, Israel didn't want to be responsible for the food and care and schooling of this population. They kind of begrudgingly let UNRWA, obviously a UN agency, do this work with the support of the world community, both via a mandate at the UN that was renewed every few years, and the bilateral support that came from nations around the world. And as you mentioned, the U.S. being primary among them. The U.S. has funded UNRWA about $7 billion over the course of UNRWA's lifetime. And in Gaza, UNRWA has had the longest food operation, basically 76 years of providing food to populations in need, the longest food operation ever on the planet. So the problematic with UNRWA when it comes to Israel is that UNRWA appeared to represent the so-called right of return, whereby refugees would have a right to return to that land they were forcibly displaced from. And in reality, that right is instituted outside of whether UNRWA exists or not, but UNRWA appeared to people to uphold that right. And that that is one of the reasons UNRWA has been attacked. And then I hate to say it, but as we come to today, and I'm watching what the mass killing of civilians by the Israeli authorities, by the Israeli military, and the killing machine that is GHF, it is very clear that UNRWA was disliked because for the very fact that it is keeping, and it has kept and has continued to keep Palestinians alive. And while keeping Palestinians alive, and is this idea that there will be a future sovereign Palestinian state. And that is something clearly this Israeli government has absolutely no interest in, and is destroying all potential, is attempting to destroy all potential for that future state, both in the absolute destruction of Gaza, as you've seen, and now we're seeing in the invasions in the West Bank and the attempt to bifurcate the West Bank in half.
Well, they've also attacked UNRWA installations outside of Gaza, yes, in East Jerusalem, I think where its headquarters was, correct? And then also I just read in Jenin and in the West Bank. Yes.
Yes, they are, and in East Jerusalem, if you can imagine, even with the Knesset laws, UNRWA was still UNRWA teachers. The primary operation in East Jerusalem was schools. And UNRWA teachers were still teaching, students were still going there up until a couple of months ago when the army and some municipal actors raided the schools and scared the living hell out of young school kids, and so now these school kids in East Jerusalem are not going to school because yes, they forcibly removed the teachers and the students from the UNRWA schools.
The foreign staff had to leave Gaza from UNRWA, although, as you mentioned, you have 12 or 13,000 Palestinian employees who receive salaries.
Yes,
and this is a very important point that's lost on a lot of people. The economic impact of UNRWA. Perhaps you can explain.
Yeah. UNRWA was, essentially the largest employer, and is today, I'm sure, because there's not much other of a commercial sector, of course, in Gaza right now. UNRWA was essentially the largest non-governmental employer in Gaza, and yes, a lot of the economy depended on those salaries that UNRWA employees received, and their ability to buy goods and services with those salaries. So it's not when there are attempts to eradicate UNRWA in Gaza, it's not just eradicate the helpers, the key humanitarians. It's not just eradicate the educators, the people who have provided a first-rate education to 600,000 students a year, with those students graduating with higher the Thanawi, their graduation levels were higher under UNRWA than the public school system by far, and at a very cost-effective rate. So they're destroying the educators. They're attempting to destroy the helpers, the humanitarians, but they're also doing further damage to any commercial activity, the ability for people to pay for those goods and services that are desperately needed by starving people today. So, and it is one of the only ways in which people in Gaza are getting a regular salary at this moment.